Ready?
I'm not sure I moved from the spot. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to connect to YouTube.
Okay.
Preparing to live stream. Redirecting. Preparing to live stream. Hi.
Hey.
Directing. Here we are.
Cynthia, it's so great to be here with you.
Stream. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. Do you know how much you're worth? Do you know what the job that you're applying for or the job that you're doing is currently paying in the market? How much money are you leaving on the table? What about benefits? Which ones are not negotiable? All super important questions that we need to have the answers to. My name is Cynthia Wade, and I'm the founder of DoOver.me. With me here today is Ashley Quinto Powell, the maven on negotiations. Ashley is a speaker and a sales executive. She speaks at a national level, so we're really happy to have her here on DoOver.me on salary negotiations, motherhood, and inclusion. Most recently for TEDx, Pinterest, Boeing, Google, and this morning she told me she already did a keynote at her, what was it, Ashley? The big not-for-profit in
Oh, it's at the United Way.
Right, the United Way. Thank you. She supports women in business through formal and informal mentoring and workshops. She's been named a Bravo Woman to Watch, an In Business Magazine 40 Under 40, and a 2018 Athena Award nominee. She's been quoted in MSNmoney.com and the Huffington Post, and is the subject of a new children's book. She's a technology sales executive, and she's my mom. Not really, she's not my mom, although I'd be proud to have her as my mom. Join me today in welcoming Ashley Quinto Powell.
Cynthia, thank you so much. I'm jazzed to be here and so excited to collaborate with you and with DoOver.me. So I'm gonna jump right in. I brought some slides to share, so I'm gonna take over the screen if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so you should see salary negotiation with Ashley Quinto Powell, yeah?
Nope, because I forgot to share the screen. So I'm gonna go back and do that right now.
Okay.
And I apologize, in spite of the fact that we did a test run and I had that written down, I forgot. But that's how quickly we could make it happen. Okay, now you should see it.
Okay. This is strange. I don't, no, I think I need to be the one to share.
Okay, now you should see my screen, so now you should be able to share your screen. Okay, there we go.
No. I need to take over the Zoom screen share. I can't do it while you're screen sharing.
Okay.
All right. Okay, here we go.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. All right. Now you can see a pair of red glasses. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Good to go.
Let me show you my favorite math in the world, and it is this statistic. So here's what I did. Like, let's talk about if you can negotiate your way into $5,000 more at the early part of your career. Let's say you, from that $5,000, you don't invest the whole thing because that would be unnecessary. But let's say just on that $5,000, you start investing in your 401k. And I base this on, listen, if you're able to get an additional $5,000 at the beginning of your career and then invest your 401k savings on top of that. So I say I'm going to do the math based on you contributing a very modest 3.8% of this $5,000 every year that you make it. I'm going to assume that there's a cost of living increase of 3.4% on your salary, which also affects this $5,000. I'm going to say on your 401k that you get an annual rate of return of 7% over the course of many years. I'm going to assume a 50% employer match up to the first 6%. Actually, base this on a 401k that I had a couple of years ago. All right, let's say that you on this $5,000 are investing that 3.8% year after year, just on the $5,000. You are in a much better position at the end of your career at retirement because you were able to negotiate that extra $5,000. Here's what it will look like at 65 in your 401k, just the $5,000. It is a whopping $134,000 and change. So when I talk about the importance of negotiating salary, I'm not talking about how neat it would be to take an extra vacation every couple of years, although yes, that would be neat. I'm talking about this type of money, which is the difference between generational wealth or not being able to put food on the table when you're 80. And this is particularly important for me because as we see more women becoming breadwinners, that $5,000 can really mean big dividends for our children as they're growing up. And our children cannot be raised in households that are making slightly less just because they're headed by a woman. All right, I'll also say that advice about working so hard they can't tell you no or put on your game face and demand more money is not helpful, so I don't give it. Here's a little bit about me. I'm Ashley Quinto Powell. This is the cutest picture ever taken of me, so I make sure every time I speak, somebody's got to see it. Look at those outstanding gold glitter shoes. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm a revenue and self-advocacy expert. So in my professional life, that means I consult service-based businesses on their revenues. And then I also am a speaker on salary negotiation and executive motherhood. And in my career, I have over $20 million in career sales. I have a programming background. I have placed over 100 consultants on assignment. I've managed very, very high performing teams. I've negotiated rate with consultants and my clients. I've negotiated with teams for myself at every level. And I want to make sure that I bring this knowledge to you because I think that it is so, so, so important. And the first thing that I'll start with is, first of all, not all jobs are online. Networking and reputation will absolutely get you where you need to go. That's not so true or important at the early stages of your career, but by the middle stages, and especially as you get into the upper levels of your career, you're going to want to pay a lot of attention to your network because that's where jobs come from. At some point in your career, you stop getting jobs you apply for online and start getting jobs that someone says, I have an opening. I really want to hire someone I trust. I see Cynthia. I think she hasn't done anything quite like this before, but I see the potential in her, and I really trust her with being able to just absolutely nail this. So I'm going to bring in Cynthia. Okay, so if you know that at the early stages of your career, I hope that you'll put a lot of effort into your network and your reputation because there is a big problem with job boards. Here's the problem with job boards. ZipRecruiter, Dice, Monster, they all say in all of their commercials that they have perfect candidates. And that's how they're enticing employers. Now, ideally, you are not a perfect candidate. You are looking for a challenge. And I've been in staffing and recruiting for a long time. And so I have heard on the back end how that sounds to an employer. Listen, this is someone who has done this for 5 years. They're going to come in with very little ramp up. They're going to nail this. It's going to be great. They're going to knock it out of the park. You actually don't want that to be you. Think about that, what that is as a candidate. That is, you have been doing this job for 5 years, and now you're getting ready to do the same job for another 5 years. They're hiring you because they're so confident that you can do it. Well, if you're thinking about your career trajectory, you actually want to be challenged, hopefully quite a lot. You want someone who's going to help you move into the next stage of your career, not be so excited about your commitment to stagnancy. All right, So you're looking for a challenge. That's the problem with job boards. And we keep thinking of our careers as a ladder, right? We hear this all the time, that you step up and your career is a ladder and we climb up the corporate ladder. I contend it is not a ladder. It's a pyramid. Here's how this works. Okay, so at the bottom of the pyramid, there are very, very easy to find jobs. At the top of the pyramid are very, very hard to find jobs, right? We can both be on the same page that hard to find jobs are way at the top. Well, the easy to find jobs are way at the bottom, and there are lots of them. And also, there are many of you. When you're in that entry level position, that's the sort of stuff that, you know what, you are so similar in your experience, and there are so many of jobs requiring this experience that it's just, I don't know. Let's put it all in and see what shuffles out. At the top of the pyramid, there are way fewer of you. The job is a needle in a haystack, but so are you. And I think people really lose sight of that they expect and they remember what it was like when there were lots of them and they were just looking for one of those easier to find jobs, one of the less specialized jobs in particular. People remember what that was like, and they remember that they can spend, I don't know, like a couple of months and have a great offer. As you go up the pyramid, there are so many less of you and so many less of those jobs that just by its very nature, it takes a long time. And that can be really discouraging. So I want you to, the next time you need this, I want you to remember that you are on the upper end of the pyramid. You're not looking for an entry-level job. It is going to be harder to find, not because there are not jobs available, but because there are less of you at that level. All right, I want to talk about this this book, Quitter. It's one of my favorite books. It's by Jon Acuff. And it's about actually quitting your job and being an entrepreneur, which I did. And I'm not sure that that's what I'm prepared to recommend in this time today. But it does ask a really good question. And that is, who becomes your boss when you hate your boss so much that you quit? Well, I ask this question of audiences all the time. And Cynthia, I like you too much to ask you this now, but inevitably someone will always raise their hand and they'll say, oh, you become your boss. Sadly, it's a trick. You don't become your own boss when you hate your boss so much you quit. Your spouse becomes your boss, or your mortgage company becomes your boss, or the person who requires the power to be paid becomes your boss. These are all people that were relying on you, and now, surprise, you don't have a job or unemployment because you quit. So I would highly recommend that you not rage quit. This is my first lesson in negotiation. Do you remember who Steven Slater is, Cynthia? Steven Slater was a flight attendant who just had a really, really bad day, and he walked down, his quitting was that he walked down the aisles of an airplane yelling expletives at passengers. Then he got to the end, grabbed a couple of beers from the refrigerator, popped to the emergency slide, and slid down. That was the best. I consider this to be the best rage quitting of all time. It's truly epic. But there cannot be two Steven Slaters, and you should not want to be in that category, because you cannot negotiate well if you need a job. So I'm going to tell you this. If you are listening to this and you are really excited about negotiating, that's wonderful. If you are listening to this and you are thinking, I do not know if I have the guts to negotiate because I don't have a job yet, I can tell you I'm with you. Listen, I want you to have bills paid. I want your babies to be fed. I want you to feel really secure. And so if what it takes for you to be secure is that you accept the first job that comes along, take it. You have my blessing on to make sure that you are at least getting your basic needs covered so that you can continue to look and negotiate when you're on firmer footing. All right, so now that you're on firmer footing, it's really important to establish what your value proposition is. I talk to a lot of people who are on a job search, and so often what I hear is why they're really good people, why they were screwed over by their last job, why they work incredibly hard. The thing is, no prospective employer wants to hear any of that. They want to hear how you are going to save them or make them money. That's what they want to hear. So figure out what your value proposition is. How are you going to make things better and bring value to that organization? For me, that sounds like, listen, I sell between $2.5 and $3.5 million a year, and I'm very confident that I can do that for you. Now, when I say that, when I follow it up with, and you'll have to pay me 6 figures, nobody bats an eye because I've already proven that my value is so much more than what I'm asking for. So that's your value proposition. Get that in order, number one. Number two, understand what your number is, right? I just said what my number is. My number is in the 6 figures. And I'm a firm believer that you should do some research and figure out what that number is before you get to a negotiating table, or before someone has the opportunity to tell you what that number is. Ideally, you should have some market research done and be really confident in your number. And also, when you say that number out loud, a really good indicator of whether it's high enough is if you want to barf. So if that number just makes you a little queasy and like want to vomit in your purse, perfect. You have picked the right number. Now, one of the instincts that people have is they don't like saying that number. I remember the first time I told someone that I was asking for 6 figures, and I said, "Isn't that wild? Aren't you thinking like, why does she make that much money?" And my girlfriend said, "No, I'm thinking you must be really smart." We need a number that is absolutely going to make us barf. Without qualifying it, we need to just say it. And one of the instincts that we have is to say, listen, we like to put it in a range. I'd like to make between, and here's my example, I'd like to make between 55 and 75, depending on benefits. Now, I say, don't give a range. I say, just figure out what your number is. Make sure that it makes you want to barf a little bit, and then just say it. The problem with talking in a range like this is inevitably this person wanted to make $75,000. They said, I want to make between 55 and 75 because they didn't want to exclude themselves from the opportunity. Now, if you really want to make $75,000 and someone offers you 55, you're going to be upset. What you have said, what you think you have said is, if you have absolute Cadillac insurance, if you have like on-site daycare and on-site gym and an unlimited vacation policy, and it's a fairy tale in terms of management, then I would maybe consider accepting something closer to 55. But I really want to make 75. That's what you believe you have said. What you have really said is, I will accept 55. No responsible business person can hear you say this and offer you anything close to or above 75. Their job as a business person is to get the best resource for the least amount of money. And so if you say, I'm hoping to make between 55 and 75, they can say, great, I can honor you and your ask by offering you 55. So there. We can't offer a range. Now, there is someone who wrote and I'm a little blinking on the name. I'll look it up when we're chatting afterwards. But there is someone who wrote a book on negotiating. He was a hostage negotiator for the FBI, and he actually disagrees with me on this. He says name a range, but he says that the range should be outlandish. He says that if you want to make $75,000, you should say, well, I want to make between 75 and 150. So either way, I think the way that we're doing ranges right now is off a little bit. All right. So no ranges. You have some opportunity for non-monetary wiggle room that you can bring in, like health insurance, PTO, flexibility, equity. I do want to say though, you need to get the cash right first. Get the cash as close as you can, and then bring in sort of this other stuff, because you can use all of these non-monetary negotiating negotiation points to get the cash where you need it to be. But you're never going to be happy at a lower salary if you have if you have too low of a salary but fantastic health insurance. It still doesn't count. So it's not going to make you happy. But you can say, for example, listen, you were able to come up to 95. I kind of need to get you to 100 on my salary. But listen, I'm on my spouse's health insurance, so you won't have to pay for part of my health insurance. Would you consider putting that in cash to my salary? Is that something you can draw a budget from? Okay, so that's my idea. All right, next. If the idea of negotiating at the negotiating table, looking someone in the eye, is terrible to you, that is okay. Communicate by email if you're more comfortable that way. I prefer to communicate by phone and email. And so if you're being pushed into a phone call and you don't want to be there, just avoid the call and keep responding with an email. And take the time that you need to put together a really well-worded email, something that's polite, something that's persuasive. And whatever you do, don't accept an offer on the same day. Now, inevitably, you'll get excited, even if it's the best offer, even if it's the best job ever. I want you to remember that you were in here with me and I gave you some good advice, and you'll come up with something. Or you'll want to talk about it with that spouse that you were so sweet to and didn't rage quit on and surprise them with, like, surprise, I no longer have an income. You also don't want to surprise them with you accepted an offer without talking about it. So just great rule of thumb, not on the same day. You can pretend you're negotiating on behalf of your family or your pets. And I actually really like this one because, I have kiddos, and when I negotiate on their behalf, I feel like you're taking money out of their mouths. And I take that really seriously, so much more seriously than if you want to pay me a little less, or you think my value is a little less. When you talk about my kids, now that is serious. And so if it helps to think of yourself as negotiating on behalf of someone that you love or someone that you are caring for, that can be a really effective way to approach a negotiating table. I will say your value is highest before you start. There's something really, really bonkers that happens when you start a new job and you go from being somebody that everyone is so excited to be on the team, and you really killed it in your interview and everybody got along super well, and then you start and you have no idea what the cultural norms are, and you have no idea where the bathroom is, and you have no idea how to work the copier. Listen, y'all, I once got into I took a job where I had said, listen, I sell high-end IT consultants, and I can really rock it at this high-end consulting firm. Just bring me in and I will make you all the money. And it's so much better because I have a technical background. And I got there and I had a brand new Mac, and I sat down and I could not figure out how to turn it on. Y'all, I had billed myself as being a technical sales expert, and I could not even turn on the computer. I had to ask someone where the button was. Because also those Macs are like hidden in the back and they're totally flush, and it's beautiful design. And I get it now that I've been on a Mac for years, but at the time, moving over from a PC, it was like my kryptonite, and I could not figure out how to turn it on. Listen, nobody wants to pay that person more. Nobody. So you have to negotiate before you start, and negotiate really, really well, because your value drops when you go through that particular period, but also because the budgets start to come from different places. Once, when you're coming in brand new, you're able to negotiate with the hiring manager and HR, and probably like the division director, for instance, is probably in on the negotiation. Once you've started there, HR will have some very clear guidelines about the percentages that can be awarded across the board, because they want to control that nobody's getting like a 50% raise. So you're probably going to get an approved raise by HR between 3 and 5%. You're going to have a really hard time making an argument that you deserve to make so much more when you've already taken the job and started performing at that lower rate. Okay, I'm going to stop there and Cynthia, I'd love to chat through questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm all jazzed. I really
Yeah,
want everybody to make big
well, this
money.
is really exciting for me, because it I always feel good when I get validated by another professional. When I hear somebody who I respect saying some of the things that I can hear myself saying to the members of the tribe at doover.me, it always makes me feel really good. So that I'm going to start off by saying that. Thank you for helping me feel good this morning. So there's a couple things too. I wanted to say an example of that is I always tell somebody that you don't even start to talk about negotiating anything until they tell you that they're in love with you and they want you, because it's at that moment when you have the most power. And
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like, what you're saying is that your value is highest before you start, because at that point you're falling in love, and you're
Mm-hmm.
only showing and thinking the best about each other. And then all of a sudden you start and they find out the reality of you and that you're really a beginner again. And nobody likes that feeling, and you don't like it as the new person coming in, and they
Right.
don't like it when they just forked over a ton of money for you. But what's done is done, and we all know that beginners will learn and you will get back up to your position of strength again. But yeah, you got to do that at the very beginning, at the very right moment. And if you miss that moment, yeah.
Yep.
So there are a couple things. I first of all want to ask you, how did you learn how to do this? How did you learn how to negotiate? Did you have a mentor that taught you this?
No, I actually did. I mean, I like my father is a very savvy business person, and so he would have helped me. My mother also is an executive, but I spent so much time in staffing and recruiting that I really got to see and participate in many negotiations um, between consultants and client managers. And then I had a team, and I got to negotiate with my team. And one of the things that I pay a lot of attention to is, listen, why are we paying certain people more and why are we paying certain people less? And you don't hear about it anymore, but when I was a kid, I would regularly hear that a woman quit her job and then was replaced by 3 or 4 people. Women in particular are forever offering so much value that can't be replicated, and that always made me really sad that those women deserve to be compensated. And because I'm so focused on revenues, this is really important to me, that we get paid for the work that we do, and that our position in society isn't a detriment to the way that we raise up our families.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I agree with that 100%. And the key to that is that a woman has to know what her value is. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about with new members of the tribe at doover.me are a thing that we call CAR statements, which is a challenge, an action, and a result. So the question is, who challenged you to do what and why? And what was your action in response to that challenge? And then what were the results? And come up with a CAR statement and then a CAR story. And the real key to that is that the power of it lies in the numbers. And remembering, like what you said, you're going to either save them money or make them money. How can you make that CAR statement? How can you tell that CAR story in such a way that it's concretely showing the
Mm-hmm.
value that you had? And then you can turn around and say, and that's exactly like what you're trying to do here. So I am totally confident that I can come in and do something very similar and get the same or better results in this
Yeah,
particular
absolutely.
situation. And that's what gives you your number. Knowing how then what you're bringing to the table impacts in their overall organization. So I think knowing your number and being able to say it out loud. So did you practice? Do you tell people that they have to practice saying that word? I'm worth 6 figures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important to also one of the things that I talk about in sales all the time is that you give people a clue about how they're supposed to, if they're supposed to object to something by your discomfort with it. So for instance, if you waffle when you're talking about the price of a product, people know that they can negotiate because you waffled. And if you just say it's this, and then allow silence to be allow silence to just lurk, they will not negotiate with you. And it's the same thing. If you confidently can say this is what I'm worth, period, and then silence, end of story, that's what you'll get. There won't be the cue from you that you feel uncomfortable with that number is a little high, that maybe you would accept something less.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I've come into contact with, not just during the time that I've run DoOver.me, but even before that, when I was a executive level recruiter, is a lot of high-powered, experienced, well-educated women with great resumes, great car statements, great car stories, and they're reluctant to negotiate for what they know they're worth. Why do you think that is?
Gosh, that's a good question, Cynthia. I have heard all sorts of things. One is that sometimes women feel like, well, if I ask for a lot, then there's going to be a target on my back. Like if I don't perform, they'll be looking at me to exit me, and I don't want to be let go tragically and dramatically. So I think that's a major one, that you don't want to be like the highest paid person because it'll have a target on your back. One of the things that happens as you move up in your career is that you always have a target on your back. As you move into like director level and VP level positions, those positions start to be more strategic, and the changes that you're expected to bring in a company, we've all seen this with C-level executives. They make a change, the change doesn't work, they're out. That has nothing to do with them having a target on their back. It has more to do with, listen, you were brought in because we thought you could change something. You did or you didn't. It's pretty cut and dry. But people in the C-suite have long known to get their golden parachute in place, because inevitably that will happen. It's more unusual for a VP of sales to be still in the same position after, I think the statistic is like after 2 years, than it is for them to be on their second job search after 2 years. So, and especially when you're brought in to do something strategically, there's always a target on your back. When you're brought in to make big changes, there's always a target on your back. So for me, the argument is, listen, you have to get more money. You have to, because if it doesn't work, you need some sort of insurance policy. And anyway, we are negotiating typically with large companies. Anyway, they're going to be larger than like the company of our family. And so listen, they can lose. They can say goodbye to 6 figures. It's not a big deal. I mean, like, they'll feel the pinch, but not really. If my family said goodbye to 6 figures, it would be absolutely devastating, right? Like the percentages and the impacts are different. And so I always encourage people who are especially in that higher level, listen, you're at risk. You're always going to have a target on your back. You need an insurance policy that you build out for yourself, so that when you're on your next job search, you're not crunched like you were, when you were mid-level.
Thank you so much for answering that question. I'm going to make sure I save this to show to my women who give me that pushback the next time it happens, and say, listen to her, she's the expert. So What about recruiters negotiating on your behalf? You know, as a headhunter, an executive level recruiter,
Mhm.
one of the value adds that I could bring to the situation was to be in the middle and negotiate between the client company that was doing the hiring and the candidate who was considering taking the job and be that mediator. Do you think it's a good idea to have somebody like that mediating on your behalf, or do you prefer to do it on your own?
You know what? I I have some mixed feelings. You know, my husband was a recruiter. My best friends are recruiters, and so I have really a lot of respect for the work that they do, and I know where their hearts are, and I know how much they want to help candidates. I do think as a candidate, you have to be really aware of where recruiters are, where the money comes from. You're not paying a recruiter, right? If you were paying a recruiter, I would say for sure have them negotiate on your behalf, be completely honest. Mostly a recruiter is paid by the employer. And when I was in staffing, all my recruiters were paid on the spread, which meant if we got the client to pay more and the consultant to accept less, that was where we made all our money. So in that situation, a candidate would really want to be prepared for what their market value was so that they could get you can't rely on someone like that to tell you what the market is, because it's not in their best interest to tell you that it's higher than it is. It might be in their best interest to tell you it's a little lower. I think the recruiters that I know would all at least tell you what the real market value was. They'd be honest with you, but it would be a bad business decision for them to say higher. And so what I recommend is that you work with recruiters and you just do your own homework so that you're not ever relying on someone who's not who you're not paying to tell you what you're worth.
Yeah, that's really great advice, to make sure that you do your own homework and don't rely on somebody else, because you're negotiating on behalf of yourself and your company, whatever that represents in terms of, you know, a partner or children or other financial responsibilities. So that's really,
Mhm.
really good advice. You know, I'd be remiss if we didn't recognize that there are people out there that are asking, well, what about COVID? I mean, COVID is real. It's been real for how many months now, and it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. How does that change anything that you've said?
Well, actually, I think it's such an interesting question. You know, there was an article that I read a couple of weeks ago that pointed out that employers are less likely to negotiate with their current staff, but more likely to negotiate with staff they're bringing in, which is backwards, right? They should correct that for sure and right away, because that's not a sound
Right.
financial decision. Um, but there are definitely industries that have been wiped out, no question. The bottom has fallen out, but there are, I contend, an equal number of industries that are doing better. Tech is one, that, and consulting is another. Consultants are in a wonderful position, because when people are not excited about bringing on full-time hires, this work still needs to be done, and they'll bring on a consultant. Um, and tech in particular is just absolutely doing so well. You know, I have friends from both my Chicago and my Madison networks saying, "Hey, who do you know who does XYZ? Because we're trying to hire." And so I think we have this we have this understanding that nothing is happening with the job market, and I think that that's false. I think that there's lots happening with the job market, and especially for people who are senior level or have a slightly more specialized skill, people still absolutely need to hire them. And I still think that they're in a powerful position.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can emphasize that enough, that there are still companies that are hiring. There are still good positions available. And if you can walk in the door with your value statement clearly in your head and be able to make those car statements, tell those car stories, and then at the end say, I am worth $120,000 because this is what I can bring to your company, that can be a
Yeah.
win-win for everybody.
Anima.
I'm sorry? Oh, so one of the COVID challenges
Yes.
of being a mom, but she's my mom too. Okay, so we'll wrap this up, but I have one more thing that I want you to share with everybody. I had the opportunity to meet you and then learn about this incredible organization that you belong to called the Dames, which is a national organization. It's headquartered out of Denver, but you run the Madison chapter in Madison, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and you just started a chapter in Chicago, and I'm going to be I am not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm one of the founding members of that one. So tell us a little bit about the Dames, going off kilter just a little bit, and why the Dames are so great.
Sure. Well, so no, you can come here and sit with me. Well, I really have loved the Dames. It's an organization for women with 6 and 7 figure businesses, or women who are charging towards the C-suite. They're director level, VP level, or C-suite executives in larger companies, and it really was built with the express purpose of building more 7-figure women-owned businesses, as there are only 2% that make it to that. And something like only 14% make it to 6 figures, and more women in the C-suite. And it's really built on joy. I have a mastermind that I really highly value, and I love these women. And we get into our group of it's 5 or 6, and inevitably there's people will be crying, we'll be going through issues, and we really dig deep. That is not the Dames. The Dames is really meant for, listen, I want to get energy from other powerhouses. I want to listen to a comedian and laugh. And for me in COVID, it actually has been such a lifesaver, because it's such a great way to meet new people and to keep my network together. And man, are the events fun.
Yeah, I'll just close by saying that I attended the 5th anniversary party a few months ago. I think it was during the summer, and I had so much fun at that virtual 5th anniversary party, more so than I've had with a lot of galas that I've had to, be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great group of women. So, well, as we wrap up today, I just want to remind everybody that this presentation, although we're doing it live, is going to be available on our YouTube channel. And if you are a member or a potential member of the tribe at doovers.me, we're going to be sending it out directly to you, because we think that Ashley Quinto Powell has got a lot of really wonderful advice to be able to give to us. And you need to be able to listen to this, not just once, but again and again, in order to be able to keep all this stuff top of mind. So when you go into the situation where you're going to have to negotiate, you can have Ashley Quinto Powell in your earpiece urging you on and on and on to go and get exactly what you're worth and not leave a penny on the table. So thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Ashley. It was great to be with you, and I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
Take care. Bye-bye.